Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is our first Goals on Track webinar for the year. Super excited to be back. Hope everyone's been well, has had a good break, which was a while ago. Enjoy the Australian Grand Prix and all the other Grand Prix that have followed. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are all dialing in from, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Today's topic, a day in the life of a motorsport engineer. And who better to talk about this than our two engineering Goals on Track ambassadors, Romy and Christina. A big thank you to Supercheap Auto for presenting this webinar and to Formula SAE for partnering with us on delivering this discussion. I will now hand over to Rhiannon, who will lead today's discussion. Over to you.
Thanks, Priyanka. Hi, everyone. My name is Rhiannon. I've been involved with Formula SAE this is my 10th year. I started as a competitor at my university, and ever since I've been involved as a judge for the business presentation event and as a member of the organizing committee. I've also done a lot of volunteer work with supercars, and I do some freelance media and marketing work within the motorsport industry as well. So I'm super excited to be here tonight to help Romy and Christina tell the real life stories of what goes on behind the TV screens, behind what you see on a typical race weekend in the world of engineering. So it's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of late nights, but it's a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to introduce you to our two speakers, Romy and Christina. So ladies, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, we'll kick off.
Let's go first. Me? All right. Hi. I'm Romy Mayer. I'm a race engineer working for 888 Race Engineering. I'm originally from Germany. I worked there for 5 years with Mercedes Motorsport in the German touring car race series. Then moved to Australia. Worked for 4 years with 888 at the supercars, and then since 2019, I'm working still with 888, but with the GT3s. We're racing in all over Australia, but also all over Asia. Yeah.
Thanks, Romy. Christina?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Christina. I am originally from Australia, but now I'm living in Switzerland, working as a CFD engineer for the Alfa Romeo F1 team. Before I moved here 5 years ago, I moved to England to study. I did my undergrad and my postgraduate degrees in England. And then I lived and worked there for about, another 5 years after that, both in the automotive industry at Jaguar Land Rover in vehicle dynamics, and then for a software company supplying CFD simulation software to various motorsport series around the globe.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Romy, we might start with you. What does a typical day in the workshop look like, and how does that change throughout the season with what you have going on?
Yeah, I mean, it changes not only throughout the season, it actually changes almost day by day, or at least week by week, because you can kind of divide my job in the work before the race and obviously at the racetrack and then after the race. So a typical day before the race weekend is we analyzing data from either last year's race or the same racetrack or the races where we have just been to. That means meetings with the other engineers, looking through setup options, what kind of changes we did, meetings with the drivers to update them on the plans for the next race weekend. And then once we came to a decision what kind of settings and setups we want to have in the car, we communicate that to the mechanics, and they will prepare the race cars according to our decisions, what we think will be the best for the racetrack. We set the cars up, we call it on a patch. It's like a flatbed where we measure every little detail from the car, not only to make sure it's the way we want it to have, but it's also a lot of legality points we need to check. Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of the the overall work, what we do before the race weekend, which is, yeah, like I said, not only we prepare the car, but we also prepare the drivers. So we analyze their data, we look through their videos, we do sim sessions with them. So it's yeah, kind of always this similar process or the similar structure which we have to get to the race weekend. And then yeah, race weekend is yeah, totally different, obviously. And then after the race weekend, it's like processing all the data. Yeah, the race weekend itself is divided usually into the days where we have test sessions, where we do different settings on the car, which we decided usually beforehand, which we want to test, and then trying to optimize the car for a qualifying session and the race sessions. Qualifying is usually making the car fastest for 1 or 2 laps. And then race would be, yeah, there's a lot of strategy involved, not only strategy compared the other competitors, but also fuel strategy, tire strategy. You might have different tire compounds throughout the weekend, and then working with the drivers to optimize their performance, both usually in the GT racing, which I'm doing now at the moment. Mostly we have amateur driver and pro driver. Usually the amateur driver need a bit more support on how to improve. The pro driver usually want to improve the car. So you're always juggling, kind of giving the pro driver a really fast car or making the car as comfortable to drive for the amateur driver. So you need to find a balance there, which is another point, which is not always straightforward, because you think like, oh, race car only just you want to make it as fast as it can go, but maybe then the amateur driver, he would not feel comfortable with that, and you might actually lose more time, and the amateur driver cannot do the lap times he usually would be able to, rather than when the pro driver is like 2/10 faster. So yeah, there's a lot of things obviously going on. I said after when we come back to the workshop, all this data, we have a lot of sensors on the car, but also all the timing data we get from the competitor. It all gets analyzed. We have a lot of reports. We sit together with the other engineers. We go through issues with the mechanics, technical issues, and operational, and then we get ready for the next round again.
Amazing. It sounds like a lot of work goes into basically every single day for what you do. And Christina, is that pretty similar for you?
Yeah, I was just listening to that, thinking how interesting it is that we can both have completely different situations. So I'm based in the factory, which means I don't go to any of the race events, except in Australia, where we run our Girls on Track program with the team. But essentially what we're doing, so as part of the CFD correlation group, we are looking more at the day-to-day things. So what is happening in terms of how the results compare between the simulations that we're running in the department and the wind tunnel results. Obviously, this also includes any testing that we do during practice sessions during the Grand Prix. So if there's any rake data, things like this, then we're also correlating to that. But obviously, the races don't happen as frequently as the day-to-day running of the wind tunnel. So we do a lot of work looking at the wind tunnel results. And I would say that actually the only interaction we really have with race weekends is those practice days, the Fridays where there is a rake test or something, and then it's processing that and then just starting the analysis. It's not often that our group is involved in really immediate feedback loops with respect to setup and things like that. It's more, if something is collected on the track that day, then we start to look at it. But really, it's like a 1-2 week process to complete analyses and then work with the aerodynamicists to help them simulate things in a way that they can be sure of the results. So a lot of the work that we do is mostly correlation side, but also setup. That involves a lot of setup. So how we set up the simulations to improve the accuracy of the results, but also considering things like how long it takes to run the simulation, and also putting processes in place that ensure that the users can actually, one, run a simulation, and two, do it in a way that we sort of error-proof things, because we have a lot of restrictions within the regulations regarding simulations. So you can only run each period, which is about 8 weeks. You can only run a certain number of geometries to simulate in the computer simulations. And so if a user can easily make a mistake, then you waste one simulation. So we do a lot of things to try and remove that sort of error-prone manual user input stuff. But yeah, I think we're more on the backside of things. So as the aerodynamicists are working on development for 2, 3, 4, 6 races ahead, we're working with them on any issues they had. So if they thought something that was going to be absolutely amazing and then it gets sent to the wind tunnel and actually it turned out to be bad, then we have to start looking into why, seeing if that has happened in other sort of geometries that they've tested, and trying to find patterns and figure out basically what's going on there. So not directly involved with like the setup of the car or any interaction with the drivers at all. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of things going on in the background.
I mean, I would say, Krystina, your role is as equally as important as Romy's is. It's what happens in the workshop between race weekends, basically, is what sets you up for, you know, doing well on a race weekend. So being able to kind of see both sides of that is really important, and they both make for, you know, a successful or an unsuccessful week at the track. Would you both agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like I remember growing up watching Formula One thinking, oh, this is amazing, I want to work in Formula One. But all you really saw were the pit crew and the mechanics and the race engineers on the wall. And so I grew up thinking, oh, I'd love to be a race engineer, because that's all I saw on TV. And then you suddenly are opened up to this whole wide world of possibilities and opportunities. I mean, basically every job that you can think of, you can also do that in motorsport, plus a whole range of others that are very specific to motorsport. And I think what a lot of people forget is that, yes, it's a traveling circus, as people like to call it, but it's also, you know, a madhouse back at home, wherever the factory is.
Yeah, 100% agree. And especially if you are in a race series like F1 or back in the days when I worked in a German touring car series, where it's a huge company behind it, a lot of not just a little race team. So yeah, the people who are at the track, they would be nothing if they don't have all the engineers at home. Like there's a whole simulation team, there's a whole design team, there's a whole team who looks after brakes, after the engine, and after the electronics. So and you just get fed by the information from them. If you don't have anything, you are at the racetrack without any analysis, any information. You would not know how to make the car, or how would you improve it, how to make it fast for that racetrack. So actually the work which goes on in the background before we go to the racetrack, that's the most important stuff. Like at the racetrack, and I probably get a bit more into detail later, that's just refining. Like even for myself at the moment, if I'm not ready the day I go to the racetrack, there's already should be 80% of the work should be done, and then you can just concentrate on all the issues or the little things. Like everything what happens beforehand is way more important than the day you hit the racetrack. That just needs to work as smoothly as possible. It will never obviously be perfect, but you want to have like everything, all the scenarios prepared as much as you can, and then you just work on the things which pops up in the moment. So yeah, like I said, everything which happens beforehand is the most important bits.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you both for that insight. So when you do travel, it's obviously a pretty it is a big component of a race team. Even if you do kind of spend more of your time back at the workshop like you do, Krystina, the traveling of the team is such a big part of that. What are some of the things that you kind of have to be mindful of when it comes to managing those traveling schedules and managing the time away from your family and kind of keeping yourself sane, especially in something like F1, where you're going around the world and dealing with a lot of time zones and just kind of the jet lag and all of that kind of stuff? What do you kind of do to manage that to the best of your ability? Might start with you, Christina.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I don't often travel, but even just going back to Australia for a week for me was just bananas. I mean, I felt awful. And it was really funny before. There were a lot of people messaging each other saying, so and so, like the physio or their physio, their private physio, or someone in the health industry had told them it's best if you do this, or you sleep this number of hours and drink this much water and don't eat these things. And so people are really considering this. Like, there's a lot of work that actually goes into, not just from the teams, but also people personally want to perform their best, and they don't want to be the person that makes a mistake. And so I think a lot of people are trying to find what works best for them when they're traveling all the time, in terms of sleep, nutrition, preparation. I know we've started also doing back in the factory that the people who work to support the race live within the operations room, they start working the hours of where the race is to also get their sleep habits changed and make sure that they're at peak mental performance at the hours where the race is on. And so there's a lot of things like that. But I think just from a general day-to-day perspective, as someone who works, essentially, I have a desk job in a Formula One team. I always get the question, how do you balance how much work you have to do, and yeah, like, is it really demanding? And I think, as with anyone's job, no matter what industry you work in, and I think Romy said that, touched on that as well, like, there's periods during the year where it's very busy, and then there's periods where it's like at a more general level. And so I think a lot of people work in motorsport, most people work in motorsport because it's their passion. And so in those peak periods, you're sort of happy and willing to give those extra hours and make a few sacrifices in your personal life, let's say, just to get the job done. But yeah, I think everyone needs to figure out how it works for themselves. Me personally, I can start to feel when I'm getting tired and it's been 1, 2, 3 long weeks in a row, and then I just start to say to myself, okay, I might go in earlier today, and then make sure that I can leave on time and actually have some time at the end of the day to sit outside and have dinner and relax, or go for a walk, or do some exercise or something like that. So it is very difficult to sort of compartmentalize. And I think especially since COVID, now that we have the ability to work from home a lot, it's so difficult because work can always be done. Whereas before there was so many restrictions, we couldn't work from home because of security reasons. And now it's, if someone needs something, they'll email you, and then you kind of open the laptop at home and stuff. So there are sort of less boundaries these days. And I think it's just really important that you figure out what works for you.
Christina,
Yeah.
how do you kind of find that balance for you? Romy, sorry.
Yeah. Was that me?
Yes, I was looking at Christina, but trying to say your name. It didn't work very well.
Yeah, obviously, like Christina said, and lucky we travel not in like time zones all around the world, but even just traveling to Asia, it's usually a couple hours, which, to be honest, it throws me out as well. We just came back from Thailand last week. It's only 3 hours. And I woke up the whole week at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. because that's 6 a.m. in Australia, and couldn't get into a proper rhythm. But then, I mean, it's important. It's different for everyone, but it's important that you find your way to deal with it. Like, I then get up and either do some work or do some exercise. Exercise always helps you, at least, to get your body moving after a long flight. Do even go for a run or do some yoga in the hotel room. There's not always possibilities to go for a run. And then, like, it was a perfect example in Thailand. We had up to 40 degrees. It was incredible hot. The cars come into the garage, the brakes are 700 degrees. So everyone was just like dripping sweat the whole day. And there you need to obviously take care of yourself, that you keep hydrated, and remind your crew as well, because like Christina said, everyone kind of want to perform on the highest level, and everyone knows they need to perform well, otherwise there might be a mistake which costs the win or something. So you need to look after your crew, or everyone needs to look after each other. When you see someone, or mechanics or whatever, they just keep on working because they needed to get a change done before the next session, and then remind them, take some electrolytes, get hydration in. Like we always had cold, fresh coconuts, which are apparently very good for hydration. That helped us going. But yeah, it was the perfect example. And obviously you're very exhausted after doing that the whole week. So then when you come back home, make sure you have a day to rest as much you can and eat healthy. Like that helps a lot, you know. Like it sounds like you heard that before, but it's very important to even the little things to make sure get enough water, get good food in. Otherwise, your performance physically but also mentally will decline a lot. And then the balance between being away a lot and then you need to know yourself how you can shut off, what's recovery means for you. Is it spending time with the family, with friends, being outside, doing other activities, or like reading, whatever? That's very personal. For me, I just like to be outside, and I have a little boy at home, so it's very easy to shut off work because he's very demanding and full on. So as soon as I'm with him, it's like, let's just focus on him, which is nice as well, because that's easy then for me to shut off work.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's important as well to have like a supportive network at home. So friends, family who understand that, we're all, involved in motorsport because we absolutely love it and it's our passion. So is that something that you both find that it really helps to have like supportive family and friends around you who know that you might disappear for a couple of weeks at a time, but when you come back, you'll be back and ready to be present?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, you miss a lot of like birthdays, wedding. I wasn't home for Mother's Day the other week, so it's like you make a lot of sacrifices, not only for yourself but also for your friends, your family. Because probably same for Christina. We've been in the industry for so long, so most of the people know me only like that. But I'll give like the moment I'm home, give as much as I can to everyone. And sometimes it's actually, it's good when they understand you have a demanding job, but sometimes I feel, especially with friends, it's good when they don't know too much of, the job, maybe that's different, but don't know, not like a big race fan, because then they don't ask, then it's really easy to shut off when you just talk about totally different topics rather than analyzing again the race you just went to, when they just ask some couple questions, but not like, oh, why did you do that, or like how come, or what happened there, or like that's kind of what I feel like I actually appreciated. Most of my friends have not really a clue which race series or what actually I'm doing there.
Yeah, I think it's so true. I think most of my friends don't, most of my friends don't work in motorsport, and it's really nice because then when you're with them, it's like just a completely different world, and they have no idea, so they don't even ask, they're not interested. So it's really refreshing in that sense. Not that I specifically don't make friends with people who work in the industry, but I think you spend so much time with like your colleagues at work and your friends at work that, it's very rare that you would then give up that little free time that you do have to then spend more time with them. Like Romy said, especially when there's a lot of people sort of waiting to see you again and stuff like that. But I think it's important to have people who understand that around you. I'm lucky my partner works in football, and I think the sports industry in general, it's the same sort of thing. Like there are peaks, there are peak moments. We're in the middle of playoffs right now for her team, and we have a day off on Monday. It's a public holiday, but she probably will have to work to prepare everything and things like that. So we kind of are very lucky in that we understand each other's sort of schedules, and it's not personal, and just do what we can to help each other out.
So because you do spend so much time with your teams really do, become like a second family. How important is having a good culture around you at work? And what are some of the things that, you can do to kind of ensure that within a team environment, you are building that really strong culture, and making it so you can all be around each other so much and actually enjoy it, and do what you need to do?
I think like any job, it's super important. I mean, we all at least spend 8-9 hours a day at work every day for 5 days a week. So yeah, it's really important that you enjoy what you do, which is, I think, what we as people who love motorsport are really lucky to have, because like I said, most people who work in motorsport do it because they love it. And so already you have that advantage of really enjoying going to work because you love the topic. But yeah, for sure, having a good culture is really important, because yeah, if also just for performance and the results, really, because if people can't work well together, then obviously you're not gonna perform as well. But I think it's really difficult in F1 because there is a lot of movement in the team. So there's always new people, there's always people coming and going. Maybe you know them from a previous job, but a lot of the time you don't. We also have a lot more interns and graduate opportunities these days. And so people are there for very short times. And sometimes, yeah, it's really difficult to even know who everybody in the team is. And especially when you work in different, like, big teams. And I know, especially for the automotive industry as well, like, you have multiple sites, multiple buildings, and yeah, it's really difficult to know everyone. And I think myself personally, I try and just make sure I at least learn everyone's name. And if I'm in the kitchen and I don't know who somebody is and I recognize that maybe they're new, I say like, "Hi, I'm Christina. We haven't met. Who are you?" basically, and then just have that exchange so that you have, you know, that friendly smile and a hello down the corridor when you pass them the next time. Because yeah, I think it's like you said, you're there so long sometimes that, you know, if you come in early one day and there's only a few people there, then at least you know who people are. Or if you're there on the weekend, you don't feel so alone. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, we need to remember it is a sport essentially, and it is a team sport, and that includes not just the drivers and the people who are traveling, but also everyone back in the team, back in the factories as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what I just touched on before as well, just yeah, make sure, like, looking after each other, especially when you traveling, you kind of create anyway this bond with the people you're traveling, because you take the flights together, you wait for the flights, you change airports together. Yeah, you know, it's you're together a lot, spend a lot of times together, even not working. But yeah, especially then on the racetrack or when it gets intense, yeah, look after each other, but also check in, because yeah, everyone is away from home and they might have something else going on at home. So just also that recognize, like, especially when you're gone for like a whole week, how we are when we're in Asia, that not everyone might be 100% each day, every hour of this week, because they might have other stuff going on. And just, yeah, be mindful that it's, especially when you're away, not only the person who's performing in that job, but there's a personal person behind all that. So I think, yeah, creating this bond and understanding each other is very important, and also to create a healthy work environment.
I think you said something really important there, like, you never know what somebody else is going through outside of work. And one thing that I really try and be mindful of and try to remind other people of is the language that they use. And you know, that it's easy to say that motorsport has quite a large banter culture, but you know, making fun of someone just to have a good laugh in the office, even if it's a joke or if it's just banter, you just never know what's going on with that person. And these types of things can really affect people. So whether it's down to people individually or the teams themselves to sort of direct the culture and you know, lead by example in that area, I don't know, but I think, yeah, I think like in anything, we should all just try and be kind to each other all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Very well said. Thank you. So we know that motorsport is still dominated by men. There are more men participating in motorsport than women. But over the last few years, we have seen that start to change. Certainly, for me, from when I started at Formula SAE to going to comp at Winton in December, the last couple of years, just seeing the number of women and girls who are taking part in Formula SAE just grow every year. It's just, it's such an amazing sight to see. So, and we know that's happening within the industry as well. And how important is that to kind of have that diversity and that inclusivity within the sport? What does that bring to the sport or to an individual team, having kind of those extra perspectives and points of view to work with?
I think like in any industry, we know, and there's a lot of research that says that diversity improves, obviously, diversity of thought as well. I think everyone experiences life differently, and then you always have a different approach to a problem. And I think motorsport and building the best and fastest car is essentially one big problem to solve. And what is the argument against diversity, really? The question is, how do we make sure, and I think this ties in nicely to what you were saying about culture as well, how do we make sure that as the diversity of the sport continues to improve, let's say, how do we make sure that the workplaces, the factory, the teams, that they're ready for this change in diversity? And I think it's really important that, yes, we understand that we want to improve the diversity and we want to try and inspire the next generation of young girls to be involved in STEM and in motorsport careers, but what are the businesses actually doing to make sure that they have the right facilities, have the right support, have the right policies in place and things like this? And to me, this is one of the key points, because like I said, I don't think there's an argument against diversity. It can only really help us as teams, as a sport in general, to push the boundaries overall together. And so, yeah, I would like to see a lot more work going on in the background to prepare for that, because we know it's going to happen. I mean, we see already with the Girls on Track program from one year to another in Australia, how many, I think we went from under 100 people applying to be part of the program in 2021 to like 500 in 2022, in 2023. So, there's already a huge spike in interest. And of course, this is fueled a lot of the time, we know, by things like Netflix, Drive to Survive, which have, increased the sort of medium in which people are exposed to motorsport and sort of the perceptions as well. And I think that's also really important, but we have to keep up with this continuous growth. So yeah, I think there's no argument against it. And like I said, there's a lot of research to say that diversity improves performance and problem solving and the approach that we take to problem solving as well. So yeah, I hope it keeps going.
Yeah, exactly what Krystina said. I mean, there is obviously no negative to it if you have more women involved. Like it can be just like, it doesn't matter if it's a man or women who actually, if they do the job properly. So why would you not include all the women? But yeah, as Krystina said, there is still a lot of work to do, and we are still one of the first. And I think in our area, we all experience like to be the first in some of these areas. Like when I had my little boy, there was, before AAA, there was never anyone taking maternity leave. So yeah, they needed to kind of write a policy, or like they even didn't know how to really work around that. So, but hopefully the person who comes next and has a kid as well, it's easier for them, because then they know. So it's yeah, it's a lot of first time for the industry, but yeah, that's what we're there for. And as Krystina said, there's a big spike there, and hopefully in a couple of years, everything is not the first anymore, and it will get easier and easier.
It's fantastic. Programs like this are certainly helping lead that pathway, which is amazing to see. So there are still obstacles and there are still some challenges for women in motorsport. What would you both say is kind of maybe something that we need to really be thinking about and being aware of while we're trying to blaze this path?
I personally, from experience, I think we still live in a world where there is sort of an understanding of what is a career for a man and what is a career for a woman. And I've spoken to a lot of young girls who have said you know, I was told that this wasn't an industry that I should work in. And I think that there's a lot to do still on education. And, you know, I look at some of my friends' parents who ask me what my job is. And when I say I'm an engineer, they think that, you know, I get my hands dirty. And so if we think about these are the people who are still educating young people on sort of what careers are right for them, and these are the opinions that they have about what engineering means and who engineering is for, then yeah, we're obviously going to face obstacles. And I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of work being done by other people. For example, Motorsport Australia, the Girls on Track program, Girls on Track programs all around the world. But, you know, at some point, I think we also have to say, and this is why the F1 in schools programs are really great, and the Girls on Track programs that get involved with the younger kids is really great, is that, you know, how do we teach kids at a younger age that, you know, they have the chance to do this, and it is a path for them. Because you sort of, if you leave it too late, then, you know, you've also kind of convinced yourself that it's not for you. So I think it's really important that we start to educate them younger, that this is an industry for everyone, and that everybody has a place here. And then hopefully we start to see that when people make, you know, choices for what subjects they want to study, because let's not forget, you know, in Australia, it's really quite young. I think you're about 15 when you have to start picking your subjects for year 10, year 11, year 12. And, you know, if you don't get the kids before then you've already lost them. So I think, yeah, it's just really important that we keep educating and doing everything we can as external organizations, but also internally from schools and things as well.
Yeah, and then what I would like to add on something which is probably at the point where most of you are at, it's just like the stepping stone into the industry, and you need to see it not as just like getting in there and that's where you're at. It's not like I always explain or like try to explain, it's not like a qualifying, you know, you're there for an endurance race. You need to make sure you have the endurance, not just peak and then that's it. So that's what I was mentioning before. You need to know how to recover, because it's you need to show up every day and perform whenever you're at work. So it's not like a qualifying where you do a lap and then you're good where you get your position, rather than it's an endurance race. You need to make sure you can perform in the long run, not only over a short time of period, even if it's a season, but then next year it's again, and there's new challenges. And yeah, they come along all the way, not only maybe in your first year and then you think like, oh yeah, I made that step, I get accepted here, but there was some new challenges, different teams, different rules, different race series. Then yeah, you might want to have a family, then there's new challenges again with balancing your family and your job. So yeah, just make sure prepare for like an endurance race and not just a qualifying.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a really great analogy, Romy. Thank you for that one. We're going really well for time, so we're gonna kind of one final question sort of from the official portion of this, and then I think we'll open it up to some questions. I can see a couple of questions popping up in the Q&A. So what's a piece of advice you would both give to the younger generations who are, you know, this is their passion, this is what they want to do, you know, what's something that, you know, has kind of maybe helped you in your career, or what piece of advice can you give to the next generation to help them make their mark?
I think probably two things. One is networking. It's a very small industry, no matter how global it is, and you never know who you bump into at what event, whether it's an exhibition or a seminar or something like this. So make sure you network and sort of keep those contacts, because, you know, it's within such a small industry, people do want to help each other out. And I always say, like, particularly when I was in the UK, it was great every time I met an Australian in the industry, and then we would keep in touch. And I always found that the Aussies sort of always helped you out if you needed something as well, because, you know, we faced the same thing moving over to the UK and trying to break into the industry. So that was one thing I found really great. And then the other one would be, yeah, just a note to remember that this is still an industry where you kind of have to go above and beyond. So finding those work experience positions, doing volunteering weekends. If you want to be a design engineer or something, like downloading a CAD software and doing a 3D model yourself and taking that to interviews and just showing initiative, basically, showing that you're willing to go that extra step. Because if you think about it, that's basically what working in motorsport is. It's what we said before. It's making sacrifices every now and then, working long hours. And I think these are just behaviors and examples that you can show that you're willing to be involved in that type of industry.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's probably two of very, very important points Krystina just mentioned. And as she said, it's obviously a lot of people want to get into the industry, and there's limited entry opportunities like internship and so on. So you need to find a way how you can stand out, and like networking is a good thing. Knowing the right people, being ready when you get an opportunity, like Krystina said, knowing which software the engineers in a particular position are using, reading or studying and reading books on that particular topic, even if it's aero, tires, data engineering. There's all very like niched books around as well, not just in general mechanical engineering books. And yeah, be open, and also don't accept the no for answer straight away. I heard that saying, it's like no is only no when you accept it as a no. So even if it means no at the moment, you can follow up in a bit of time, or suggest a different way or something. So yeah, it needs some perseverance to jump on board.
Okay, it's that endurance race, not the qualifying. So yeah, thank you both. All right, we'll open it up to some questions. Let me just find where I'm at and jump into the Q&A. All right. First question. I'm currently a mechatronic engineering student in Perth. I would love to get involved in motorsport someday. What path would you recommend I take to get there? So yeah, how would the student in Perth kind of get started in a motorsport career?
I think basically before, so it's like looking for opportunities to get involved, to volunteer in an area that you're interested or not. But yeah, it's like going that extra step, or if your university has a Formula student team, getting involved with that as well is always really great. Yeah, I think if it's something that you want to do, then it's taking those steps to find the opportunities and show that you're willing to take the time to do it.
All right. Next question. I might paraphrase just because it's a bit of a long one, but how do you kind of manage if you've got something going on in your personal life or outside of the track? How do you leave it at the door and come into a race weekend or come into the workshop with a clear head and focus on what you need to focus on, so you're doing your best and your team is staying safe and performing to their best?
Yeah, it's
I think
actually
go, Romy.
It's from, like, I can just talk from my side as a engineer at the racetrack. It's pretty, to be honest, it's pretty easy when you have the distance. So once I'm at the racetrack, and because you work so long hours, you kind of forget everything what happens at home or before and after. So it's like in a bubble. So you forget, or like, yeah, you forget stuff you need to do the week after when you come back home, like, oh, need to book in a car for service. You would totally not remember to call them. Like, there's no chance you remember all that. Like, it's kind of in this bubble. So it's actually pretty easy to isolate everything which happens in your personal life when you're at the racetrack, but mainly because you're in this bubble, you're geographically away, you with different people, then you're not coming home every night. So I found that actually pretty easy, and sometimes it's too much that you forget, like you would forget my mom's birthday if I don't set a reminder and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's from my side how I can explain it. It's easier than you think when you're actually on the racetrack. Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably in the workplace it's different. You know, if you're just doing your daily routine of waking up and going to the office and stuff, I think if we go back to what we said about culture as well, and it's important that, you know, you respect the people around you and also sort of respecting your limitations as well. Like it's not benefiting anybody if you're sitting in the office stressing about something else in your head, but doing work at the same time. That's when you're likely to make mistakes. And I think there's nothing we need to also, you know, this is an industry where we're always saying that we need to push and keep working no matter what. And we have people turning up to work even when they're sick and things like this. And I think we just need to be honest with ourselves and not be afraid to have those conversations, speak to your manager, say, look, I'm having a bit of a terrible time right now, even if you don't want to discuss what it is, but there's no shame in saying that you've got something going on and maybe you'll come in later because you've not been sleeping well, but you'll make sure that the work gets done. And I think, yeah, just normalizing those conversations and not sort of pushing like this toxic environment where you know, you have to keep working all the time no matter what. And I think, yeah, this is maybe one thing that we lack in the sporting world still, particularly in the high-paced environment of motorsport.
So we've got a couple of questions that are all sort of a similar thread around choosing the right subjects. You know, in the last couple of years of high school, how do you know kind of what subjects to choose? And I guess that kind of maybe aligns with, you know, what are some of the different engineering roles you can do within a team? Because I would imagine depending on, you know, what you want to do, that might affect the subjects that you choose, or am I thinking that's way too granular?
I think once you're doing an engineering degree, they're all pretty similar. So for example, at school, I did chemistry. Oh, I don't even remember. Chemistry, maths, IT, French, English, Greek. I didn't really do anything technical apart from chemistry and maths, I think. So, you know, I didn't do physics, but for an engineering degree at the time, you only had to do one of physics or chemistry, and I preferred chemistry. And then I think once you start doing your engineering degrees, there's also the opportunity to change, at least when I was studying. So I was originally enrolled on an automotive course, then I changed to a motorsport course, but actually the first 2 years in all our classes were electronics, aerodynamics, mechanical, motorsport, automotive. We were all just doing maths, physics, dynamics, these types of things. And maybe you had one module here and there that was different. So I think there's a lot of scope once you're actually studying to start to understand which classes you like better, maybe which topics you like better, and then move into that. And I would say that, you know, getting into the engineering degree is the biggest thing. And then finding your niche can happen also during that time as well. I think particularly the way in which universities work with modules and credits and things like this, you can always move here and there if you really change your mind on something. And yeah, I would say that that's probably, yeah, the biggest thing is actually just starting an engineering degree somewhere and going from there.
Yeah, I agree on that as well. I mean, obviously it helps if you select like math, physics, and so on early, just to get a feel if that's something for you, because it will come up a lot in your engineering degree, if you like it, or if you can study it and spend a lot of time looking at numbers and equations. But the studies itself is then when it comes down to the details, what you want to do later, even though like Krystina said, you can change all the time, and that's me as well. Like I started to study industrial engineering, which is a mix between engineering and management, and then only after 1.5 years, when I did my first internship in Germany, we have a half-year internship after 1.5 years, I realized I actually want to be like an engineer who does only the technical stuff, not just working on an area in a department where you need to know technical side, but mostly doing management or controlling or purchasing or something. So I changed like completely my course and went actually back another semester. We have semesters in Germany, only then to study automotive engineering. and specialized or in design, which I'm not doing now either. So it's yeah, it's a journey, and you figure it out on the way. Even in your first job might not be the one you want to work in for the rest of your career as well. So yeah, it's a journey, and if you set it up just in a little bit in a direction, then you follow it through your uni degree and then onto your jobs.
I'm just going to jump in, sorry. If whoever's listening, if you go to the Girls on Track page on the Motorsport Australia website and you scroll down, there's a booklet called Engineer Your Career. And it has a bunch of information about the different, ways you can get involved, qualifications you require, like the skills you need, what you need to study, how to get work experience, so on and so forth. So that's a really, really good resource. And I'd really advise you all to have a look at that as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic information. Thanks, Priyanka. And I think that kind of ties into a few of the other questions that we've got coming through about just some of the pathways and ways to get into motorsport. So there's a couple of questions around, how are some ways that you can gain experience, and what are some of the things you can do to, make yourself known to those teams and really kind of set yourself apart. Do you guys have any sort of tips or insights on what someone without a lot of experience can do to really kind of set themselves apart and make a good impression?
Yeah, obviously there's not, like, some of the teams don't have like a typical career page where you can apply for a job or where they put actually jobs offer onto, because as Christina said, it's like a little motorsport world. Everyone knows each other. Usually you find your job because you know the boss from the other team, or they approach you, or you approach one of your former colleagues. They're looking for someone. So networking, which obviously Girls on Track community is an amazing community on Facebook, but all the ambassadors or our champions, they're all very open. You can approach everyone if you have a more detailed question or if you need any contact or an introduction. But then, yeah, like you need something to stand a little bit out. Like these days, most of the engineers who want to get into motorsport are doing Formula SIA. So there must be, even that, I know it's like a huge load on top of your studies, but if you can stand out in another way, that helps as well. It's not only and it's not particularly a must to do that as well, especially probably because so many people are doing it at the moment. But if you can show you've been volunteering with a support category in a whole season and being with one team, or showing up at a couple of the events, like 3 events or 2 events which are in your state, because obviously the travel is another point when you're not fully employed, but that might make you stand out of all the others as already who are doing Formula SIA or doing automotive engineering.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything, right? Isn't it? It's networking, but also doing the things to stand out in terms of giving up your time, whether that's volunteering or, like I said before, maybe doing a project of your own if you're into data analysis, setting up your own Git profile and putting your coding projects up there and putting a link to that on your CV. And then when you're networking, making good impressions. So if you're reaching out to me or Romy on LinkedIn or whatever and saying, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested in, these are some of the things I'm doing, what advice could you give? Like, you never know, that person that you're reaching out to might have an opportunity within their business, might know a friend who has an internship opening or something. And if you can make that initial first impression, and networking isn't just about reaching out once, it's maintaining that relationship as well. And I think if you can do that, then there are plenty of people who I've tried to help get internships as well, because we've had a good networking experience, and they've really showed that they were speaking in the right way, doing the right things outside in their extracurricular work, doing well at university, knew a few people who I knew, they had been mentioned, and then I, could pass on the CV to somebody in another team who I saw there was a position open for, and things like that. And, that doesn't guarantee you anything, but yeah, it is, like we've been saying, it is a very small world. So I think if you know someone and you can just get your CV seen, whether that's, you know, you're still applying through all the same ways that everyone else is, but maybe your CV definitely gets seen rather than being missed. So yeah, it's a combination of everything.
Yeah, fantastic. There was a couple of questions specifically around, you know, how to network and how to kind of make those connections. So you answered, I think, a couple of questions in the one there, Krystina. Thank you. We might just, I've got time for maybe 2 more questions. So there's a couple of people wanting to know what some of those pathways are to start working in motorsport in Europe. So Krystina, this one might be a bit more for you. Just how do you go from being in Australia to working in Europe? And of course, Romy, if you've got maybe some ideas coming the other way, you might have a unique perspective on that as well.
Right, we both switch places basically.
Yeah.
You know, I think it is really difficult purely from an immigration perspective when you really think about it. I'm very lucky. My parents are Greek and I have a Greek passport, which means I could live and work and study in Europe. And that made it a lot easier in that sense because I didn't need to apply for visas. I didn't need to be sponsored to get a job or something like this. And then that is what makes it difficult. It's not impossible. I work with a few Australians here in Switzerland. And so, you know, there are also people that worked in other European countries before they came here, but also we have one guy who started recently. He came straight from university in New South Wales. So it is possible to come straight here. I think there's no specific website or specific company. I think, you know, especially in F1, most teams will say on the job advert. I know at Sauber, a lot of the time they can only hire people who have the right to work within Europe, and it will say that. But I always say to people also, you know, I've had people contact me recently and saying, oh, should I really not apply? And I say, no, just apply or contact them and ask the question, what would it require me to do? Because I mean, you can't be an immigration expert in every country and find all this information, especially because it's always changing. But you know, ask the company, ask the team, what is it that you would require? Do you have somebody in the company who's done it before that I could maybe speak to? Anything. Like, there's no harm in asking these questions. I think the answer can only worst case be no, or you don't get a response, but you can at least tell yourself you've tried. But for sure there are many hurdles, and I think that was the benefit of also being in the UK studying already. So when you study in England, at least when I was there, you had, I think, 3 months, even if you were non-European, you had 3 months after your studies to stay, and that gave you the opportunity to, you know, apply for jobs, go to interviews and things like that. So there are some perks for already being there. Obviously it makes you available for interviews and things like that as well. Luckily these days I think most interviews are online anyway, so you can probably get around it a lot easier these days. But I don't think it's a golden ticket. I think if you're studying there or if you're there already, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any easier. I mean, I applied for hundreds of jobs in Formula One when I was leaving university. That didn't mean that I was going to get them. And I certainly didn't get them. And it was like a long journey of applying and continuously applying and continuously developing until I could get there. So I think it doesn't really matter where you are. I think if you're the right person, then somehow it'll happen.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nowadays in Europe, actually, there's so many race teams, especially with the GT3 racing going pretty well there. They have so many race series, so many teams, and it's getting easier in the terms, like I'm speaking from Germany. When I was there, I think most of people were speaking only German, all the mechanics, definitely most of the engineer, but now it's really international. So you could go to Germany, to a German race team, not speaking any German, and work there. And if you brave and able to go just over Europe for a couple months and just knock on the doors, look up a couple of race teams, you might be interested. You might think there is like a race series you might be interested in beside F1, because obviously F1 is always a bit harder than some of the other entry race series. And then just knock on the doors, have chats, build a network there, try to find some people who can introduce you to the right persons. And like Christina said, it's endless until you find a job, and it was probably same for both of us. And even for myself, coming from Germany with 5 years experience in motorsport, it was pretty hard as well to get a job in Australia, because as I said, the most Australian teams, they don't, even the supercars teams don't have a career side on their website or no email like HR, whatever. So it was so hard to find a contact to each team. And I was ready. If I wouldn't have got the job, in the end, I got it before I came to Australia, but I was ready just to go to Australia. As a European, I think probably still the same. You could have a work and travel for half a year. I would have done that. I was ready to leave Germany and to just see what's out there, just go to the teams, introduce myself and see what opportunity come up. And you can always come back. So yeah, that's what sometimes it takes, yeah, especially when you want to work overseas. But obviously the motorsport world in Europe is much bigger than Australia. So I mean, there's more people there anyway as well, but I think they're much more race series where I have like a couple entry points rather than Australia.
I think as well, you can also go around it a different way. You know, before I worked in motorsport, I worked for a software company who supplied software for motorsport, and you know, it's relevant experience. But it's also a much bigger organization. It's a global organization. So maybe you could start working for that company in Australia and then do an internal move to a company, to the same company, but in a European office. And then you already have the right to work and live there. And then you can start looking in that way as well. So I think bigger picture, think suppliers, think, you know, things around the actual team or series. And then you can find ways in like that as well to sort of get around all the obstacles.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. It's not only the race teams where you're a motorsport engineer, and especially the race teams sometimes actually look for the people who work with the suppliers, like the tire engineer at a F1 team. Most of them work with the tire companies before, with Michelin, Pirelli or whatever, just because they have so detailed knowledge then on that particular topic. Same with, there are people from Multimatics for damping, or Bosch is huge company and they have a huge motorsport department, and these people are very, very valued for a motorsport team. So if you would work with Bosch and developing their electronic control units for the race car, even starting with the road cars, then moving to race car, these people will be very valid for later on working in a motorsport team.
Especially because these companies that are so big, these suppliers, and we're talking software companies, component manufacturers and things like this, a lot of the time, like Romy was saying about Pirelli, for example, they have an engineer dedicated to each team, and it's the same. So in software and companies, they have application engineers who are actually doing the work for the teams, or doing a proof of concept, and you know, actually working on site. And so you are getting that actual experience in the industry and doing that actual work that somebody working for a team would be doing. And so that's why it becomes such a valuable pathway, because it is the most relevant experience that you can have without actually working for the team.
And I think we have time for just one more question, and we're going to end it on a high. What's the most rewarding part of your job, and you know, what makes it worth it at the end of a really long day?
Well, I would like to say winning, but we're not there yet. But certainly doing well in a race on the weekend, yeah, makes it worth it. And also like things like, I got the chance to go to Australia to do the Girls on Track program, and you know, every time we did a talk or something, there'd be all these young girls coming up and asking questions. You know, how can I get into the industry? I really love it. And I think to see also, you know, the fact that I can be here and work in F1 and then have that impact as well, to me, that's the most rewarding thing. But certainly winning and doing well within the team would be the next on the list.
Yeah, 100%. I can just agree on that. Actually, last year
You
we
can
were
agree to the winning.
Yes, it's 100%. There's no question around that. Especially last year, we had a very successful year. We won the championship, and yeah, it's very special. It's very special for the whole team, not only for the driver, for the engineer. It's every person who works in that team. It just creates an amazing environment. Even then, obviously, you not only win, but then even then, the harder days or the days when it doesn't go so well makes it easier if you had a win before, you have a win again. But even, yeah, I mean, like I think Christina is similar. We have a jobs which a lot of people admire, and we do too. In every job there's something which you don't like so much, or but on the other hand, I think being able to travel the world or travel Asia and Australia, for me, doing a job you like is pretty amazing, and it's just that itself is very rewarding.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you both, Romy and Christina, for all of your insight and sharing, you know, what you do on a day-to-day. It's, you know, so exciting to hear firsthand what actually goes into it, and, you know, what it takes to be where you both are. So just want to say a massive thank you to you both again for being here, and to everyone for joining us tonight. And if you want more information about the Girls on Track program, you can head to motorsport.org.au/girls-on-track, and yeah, find out how you can get involved.
And just to add, for those of you who are aged 15 to 22, we have an event called Girls on Track Pathways, where you have the opportunity to meet someone like Romy in person. Unfortunately, we can't fly Christina to Australia from Switzerland for every one of these events, but she does dial in, and you'll get the chance to chat with both of them, more one-on-one time, asking those questions, potentially connecting with them, building your network. Like they said, it's really, really important in motorsport to know people within the industry. Just a bit of a heads up, we're in Darwin next, then we head to Sydney, Brisbane, and more events to follow through the rest of the year. So thank you, Romy, Christina, Formula SAE. We've got Suzanne, who's patiently been listening in. Thanks, Suzanne, for all your hard work too. And everyone else for joining us tonight. If you have any questions that we haven't answered, send them through to girlsontrack@motorsport.org.au, and we'll get those answered. Good night, and see you soon, hopefully at a racetrack.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.